The reason that I'm running is that I feel that I've served for 10 years and there's unfinished business that needs to be taken care of. Some of the most important ones are the whole issue of uranium mining and milling, and the other one is the cleanup in Los Alamos that we deal with during the interim, but then we form legislation that comes out of the interim committees that we promote during the regular session.
I'm Lujan-Steinborn. I'm running for state representative for District 35. I was born in District 35 off of Bloomdale Street is where I was raised. I grew up selling alfalfa sprouts on the downtown farmers market, which is in this district as well, and very excited for the opportunity to represent that area. Grew up in Las Cruces, went to schools here, and of course came back to Las Cruces to work for Senator Jeff Bingaman. And from 2006 to 2010, I served in the New Mexico legislature and was the vice chair of the Health and Government Affairs Committee, served on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee as well. But really, I'm running for office because I'm passionate about serving our community. I'm passionate about working on public policy issues. We're living during very challenging times. We need to do all we can to create jobs for our area, to continue to improve New Mexico's education system, continue this effort to protect our environment and our culture, and I think we see real divisions in these areas in Santa Fe. We need strong voices who will stand up. And as always, as I found in my previous time in the legislature, we need people who are going to stand up for Las Cruces and people who are going to stand up for southern New Mexico. I found, and I'm sure Antonio has seen it for all of his years, when they talk about the border, they talk as if the border ends at Albuquerque. And so we need strong advocacy for this part of the state. And I'm excited to get back in and start representing this area again in Santa Fe. That's why I'm running.
Start with the issue of that sort of dominated the session this past year or this year. Do you support legislation that would prevent illegal immigrants from obtaining New Mexico driver's licenses? And what other changes, if any, would you like to see in state law regarding those who are in the country illegally?
Sure. It's important to know that we are not the federal government. New Mexico does not have primacy over immigration policy. And so I remember we talked about this 2 years ago, and what is the appropriate role for New Mexico in a situation where the federal government has not done what they need to do to address our border issues. New Mexico, as we know, is the most diverse state in the country. We are the most Hispanic state in the country. I'm concerned, and I know many other folks are concerned about racial profiling here in the state of New Mexico. I was a co-sponsor of legislation to make it illegal to racially profile in this state. So number one, I'm concerned about anything that would be a backdoor attempt to profile citizens. At the same time, as a person who's very concerned about security of this country, and I believe we need to enhance this law with safeguards that make sure that New Mexico is not abused, that we are not taken advantage of in a way that can make our country vulnerable to those that would seek to do us harm. And so I think this issue has been highly politicized, but there are very practical solutions, I believe, and they can take a lot of different shapes, frankly, that would accomplish those two things. Safeguard our law, keep it from abuse, and at the same time not put us on a path to large-scale racial profiling of our state. That's where I'm at.
I don't think that we differ very much. I see, as Jeff was saying, the federal government has primacy over the immigration issue. I see this as a public safety issue because if an individual is not allowed a driver's license, then they cannot have insurance. And as a result of that, I think that the compromise that was efforts this time around was a good compromise, where there would be, as Jeff was saying, where we would safeguard our abuse from individuals trying to come in from other states and get a driver's license. But at the same time, I think that it's a public policy issue, and that we have to protect the public. If my figures are correct, prior to the passage in 03 of the driver's license, there were over 30% of people that were uninsured motorists. It's gone down somewhere to around 8% now. So I think that that's our primary responsibility as state legislators would be to deal with what's in the best interest of New Mexico.
Okay.
The other issue that gained a lot of attention, or one of the other issues that gained a lot of attention this past session, was education, and specifically reading for students who are in third grade or younger. As you look at where we compare to where those children compare to their peers elsewhere in the country, what would you support in order to bring them up to a competency and bring them up to standards with their peers elsewhere in the country?
I believe that we have to start much earlier. I think that third grade retention is a simplistic approach to a much more complex issue. I think that an example is my granddaughter is not as behind in reading, but she's excelling in mathematics. So what happens to those individuals that would get bored with school, or we more than likely would lose them? So I think that we need to start much younger, and I don't support third grade retention.
You know, when I was in the legislature before, I sponsored a bill to work with the education department. I worked with public education department to do a little study. Unfortunately, it was at the tail end of the previous administration, to look at the correlation between fourth grade reading and math levels and high school graduation rates, and eighth grade. There's a belief in academia that these are certain benchmarks, that if kids are falling behind then eventually they will fall out of the system. They will not be successful in the academic environment. You know, I would like to, rather than say the word retention, I'd like to use the word intervention. I think I fully support the concept of intervening, of making sure that we have those benchmarks. It is a holistic system, as has been said, and I agree with that. Having said that, this concept of measuring their performance at key moments, I think makes a lot of sense. Certainly the third grade reading levels and writing levels are very important, but we have to fund it. And this was a divide in Santa Fe. It's easy to talk the talk. It's like veterans. Politicians love to talk the talk, but then they don't walk the walk. It's a very worthwhile investment to us. In the state of New Mexico, we have extremely high rates of poverty, extremely high dropout rates. No legislator, no public servant should be satisfied with that. This is one way where we can measure their progress and put the funds and the resources to intervene in that child and help get them up to speed so that they're able to move on to the fourth grade and still be successful in the academic environment, because that will lead to success in other areas and ultimately help with our economy and help with the future of the state. So intervention and then resource it properly, and that's what I'd love to be a part of.
The state this year finally emerged from the budget crisis that you had to deal with in your final years and that you dealt with the last few years. As we get this new money coming in, what do you think the priority should be for restoring cuts that had taken place before? And on the flip side, what areas do you think there is a little bit of waste and areas
Sure.
that could be cut further?
First things, we need to get on solid fiscal ground, and so that means that before we start celebrating new money, we need to build up our reserve funds as a state. We need to make sure we're on very solid ground. As we remember, a few years ago, we were giving tax cuts at the same time. Others were warning, hey, the sky could fall, it could happen, and sure enough, that which wasn't expected did occur. So we got to get ourselves on solid financial footing. I think beyond that, looking at Medicaid, looking at the cuts that have happened, looking at folks at the DD waiver program, some of the most vulnerable amongst us here in society. New Mexico really needs to reform that system. We spend more per patient client than any state in the country, and yet we serve a smaller number. We need to find a way to make our dollars go farther, and I know that they've been looking at reform since I've been there, but that's one area where we need to try to get more folks into that program. Certainly our seniors and kids on fixed incomes, if we can help expand Medicaid a little bit, that would be a good thing. Again, these investments in public education, these are fundamental keys to New Mexico's future. Economic development, things that help stimulate jobs, we should continue to invest in those resources. As far as where we can look at paring back, in these tough times, everyone has to sacrifice. We all have to pitch in this together, and I have not seen sacrifice in some of the areas of, frankly, corporate handouts that we give, corporate pork. When I was in the legislature, we saw lobbyist after lobbyist, and they've got their well-heeled client, and they get these carve-outs in the tax code. It's time that we get rid of those special interest handouts that have been larding up New Mexico's tax code. If we do that, I think we can definitely reprogram those funds to help with relief for real small businesses creating jobs in this state, help invest in education, help invest in infrastructure, and build up our reserve funds. This would be the approach to the budget I would be looking to take.
Yeah, I believe that we have to be on solid fiscal ground before we move on into seeing what we're going to spend money on. But Jeff mentioned economic development. I was very concerned and spearheaded the initiation of the aerospace engineering program here at New Mexico State. We talk about the space legacy, but at the same time, we did not have an aerospace engineering program in the state. And so we finally have one, and it's up for accreditation now, and I believe it will get accredited. I think that we really need to look at what are our priorities. I was in Chicago the other day, and Tom Daschle said something that was very profound. He was saying that health care and what we're spending on health care, says it's a pyramid. Unfortunately, the top of the pyramid is where the spending goes. And at the bottom of the pyramid, there's never enough to go around. We really need to take care of the most vulnerable people in our communities.